Hey guys, welcome to section 4, An Uncertain Welcome. Hopefully you guys are staying nice and healthy and you are washing your hands and you're sneezing into your arm. Don't be gross, don't projectile sneeze on anyone. Alright, I'm going to go through your questions. Some of you still haven't turned these in, so you have until midnight. Alright, ready? All right, the first question says, which country gave the Statue of Liberty to the United States? You've known this one for a long time. France. Okay, why did they even give it? Remember, Gustave Eiffel was the one that was hired to design the Statue of Liberty, same guy who builds the Eiffel Tower, right? It was a birthday gift. And you know what's cool? A lot of people don't know this. Like when you look at the Statue of Liberty, it looks like this big concrete-looking statue. You know, it's made of bronze. Have you ever wondered how thick the outside of the Statue of Liberty is? Like if you look at it, take a guess in your head right now. Think. Okay, I'll give you a second. All right, believe it or not, take 2 pennies, okay, and stack them on top of each other, and then you look at it, and that is how thick the outside shell of the Statue of Liberty is. It's actually very thin. If you were to take that shell away, and there are pictures of it when it was being assembled, when it was on the main, when it was on Manhattan, and parts of it I think were in Brooklyn as well while they were assembling it. It's really neat to see how big those pieces are. But anyway, the inside structure is actually what's so fascinating. And I put a documentary on your Google Classroom that you should go and check out, okay? You'll get to see a lot of the same pictures that I'm talking about. All right, the text says that the Statue of Liberty continues to be a symbol of liberty today. What American liberties or freedoms does this statue represent? Well, this goes back to the whole idea of, remember the reasons why people were leaving the other countries. Religious freedoms. Freedoms to speak out against a tyrannical government. Maybe racial inequality, definitely religious inequality, economic opportunities. For many years in Europe, if you were not of a certain class, you couldn't own land. So, and here is land in abundance in this new world. But we're going to see plenty of that rear its ugly head in this chapter as well. Plenty of the ugly side of America's welcome to the immigrants. Next one, number 4, says, where does the Statue of Liberty stand? The name of the island is Liberty Island. Growing up, I always thought it was Ellis Island, but we see that's a different island. They're near each other. It's in between New Jersey, Staten Island, and Manhattan. All right. Next question. Why do you think Emma Lazarus called her poem The New Colossus? Well, who was she referring to? She was referring to the Statue of Liberty, which is this big giant, right? Well, we know that a colossus is a giant. If you guys want to do a Google search, you can find, remember when we did ancient Greek history, if you like Greek history, you can see in Rhodes, the city of Rhodes in Greece, there was a statue that stood for many years. It was called the Colossus of Rhodes. It finally fell, I forget which year, due to a large earthquake. But for many years, that was a wonder of the world. Okay. Next question. What happened at... Wait a minute. Yeah, okay. What happened at Ellis Island? Well, that was a processing station, okay? All of these ships that were bringing in immigrants in the 1800s, in the 1880s, 90s, and into the 1910s, 20s, and 30s, really, would have been processed through there. They would have given their name, where they were from, and basically, you know, this year's 2020, so we're doing a census. You were sort of like using these numbers and finding out where they were going so we could categorize. And if you ever want to do something really cool, you can go to Ellis Island, the website. I think it's ellisisland.org. And you can see all of the archives that they have kept meticulously. All right, number 7. Why was Ellis Island known as the Island of Tears? Well, in your book, it's, when we think of tears, first thing that pops in your head is somebody sad, but also there were tears of joy as well. So this Island of Tears, people were leaving family, but they were going to a new life. They were going to a new world. So it was imagine, you're a foreigner, you can't speak this language, but you're going to this new world where there's all these promises, and the smoke clears, and then there in the harbor you see this giant statue sitting there, and on the pedestal of the statue is a portion of Emma Lazarus's poem. It says, "Give us your pot, you're tired, you're poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free," or your trash teeming upon the shores, yearning to be free. That's what they're referring to, this new life that they could never have had at home. Which I should stress, we're talking about European immigrants. We're not talking about Asian immigrants. We'll get to that here in a minute. All right. Number 8 says, why do you think an immigrant whose last name was changed, how do you think that they would feel about it? Well, I think this question here is it's more how you interpret that paragraph, okay? So I'm not going to give you a right or a wrong answer. I'm sure some people would have not liked to have given their family name up. I think that the example that they have in the book is like a Walakinski, and let's say the guy who was writing the name down didn't know how to spell it, so he would write Wallace. I think that was the example that they gave. You might not like it, but then again, in some ways, might you embrace it? Well, you're embracing this new life. Might you embrace that as part of the change? I think so. I think that makes sense. I might be wrong, but I'm never wrong, so, deal with it. I'm just kidding. All right, let's go on. Number 9 says, what is nativism? The easiest way to describe it, it's very strong anti-immigrant feelings, okay? And it's ironic because nowadays we use the term Native American to talk about somebody who was native born before European settlement here in America. But these guys in the 1850s, started in the 1840s, I believe, in the 1850s and 60s, called themselves the Native Americans because we're native born here, which is sort of funny because maybe their parents were immigrants, but since they were born here, they felt a strong attachment, called themselves Native Americans, and they were against immigration wholeheartedly. You're going to see two separate groups. You're going to see like these Native Americans, very xenophobic. If you don't know what that word means, look it up. It's xenophobia, okay? Xenophobia. Very, very anti-immigrant. You're going to see two different waves in the before the Civil War and then after the Civil War, like in the 1880s and 1890s. In the 1850s, which immigrants did Native American or American nativists target? They were very, very anti-Catholic, very anti-immigrant, mostly Irish at that time. They did not treat the Irish very well. And of course, it was, for most of the people that were here during that time, before the Irish, they were Protestant. And they did not like the Irish Catholics coming in. It's going to change a little bit, though, into the 1880s, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. Next thing says, what was the Know Nothing movement? Well, really, it started out to be a joke amongst the Native Americans, what they call themselves, the nativists. It started out as a joke because they would talk about anti-immigrant sentiment in private, but they didn't want people to know about it in public, because what if you owned a store in Manhattan and half your customers were Irish? Well, you'll take their money and you'll sell to them, but then privately, behind closed doors, you're anti-immigrant. All right. And it actually turns into a political party. The Know Nothings are then called the American Party, and they actually had people, I believe it was Millard Fillmore, I'm not sure, quote me on that, but it was a president who at one point in time was part of one of those parties, was part of that party. And I might be wrong about the Fillmore thing. All right, let me go on. Okay, whom did nativists target in the American West after the Civil War? The Chinese. They were working on the railroads, and they were having a rebellion of their own in China. So a lot of people were fleeing the battles, the fighting, and moving to the western part of North America. What was, let's see, what nativist laws about Chinese immigration did the U.S. Congress pass? Well, the first law was actually making it more difficult for Chinese to become citizens than if you were a European. You had to wait almost double the amount of time that you would if you were a European. As a matter of fact, you can look up Angel Island off the coast of San Francisco was sort of like the Ellis Island of the West, except it had none of the charms and beauty of Ellis Island. It was almost like more of like a prison holding cell for the Chinese when they were coming into San Francisco, where Ellis Island, we in American history have embraced that and almost made it like a fairy tale. All right. Oh, and the second law was this, the Chinese Exclusion Act, where they literally were making the immigrants move back to China. They were kicking them out. Number 14. How was nativism in the 1890s different from nativism before the Civil War? Well, a couple different things. Before the Civil War, almost everybody that was coming into this new country they were either from Ireland, from England, mostly, and they were English speaking, and they were Christian. They might not be Protestant Christian, but they still worshipped. They were still Christians. Okay. Now, if you look in the 1890s, 1900s, where did you see so many of the immigrants coming from? Well, yes, you did have places like Italy and Greece who were Christian, but they weren't English speaking. Okay. How about the Chinese? Neither were they English speaking, nor were they Christian. So that made for much more of a violent nativist approach than in the 1850s and before. All right, next one, number 15, sorry. How are new immigrants similar to old immigrants? Well, I would say that their reasonings for coming here would have been their biggest similarity. What were they escaping from? What were they coming to? Some wanted land, some wanted to just make some money and then go home, but all of them altogether ultimately wanted a better life for their families. All right, and then last thing, number 16, why were labor leaders worried about immigration? They were afraid that these immigrants that were coming in were going to work for less wages, and therefore they were going to threaten the people who were already in those positions, right? So they were scared for that. Doesn't that sound sort of familiar? Somebody asked me the other day, if I could compare this to what's going on in our country right now. The only thing that I will say without getting too political is this. A lot of things might change throughout history, but a lot of things stay the same. And when we look at xenophobia and when we look at protecting what is, somebody's rights or what they feel is rightfully theirs, you're still going to have people ready to fight, ready to argue. So my suggestion to you is take each case and keep from generalizing. Listen to both sides and then act fairly and accordingly. But always give people the chance to speak. Thank you guys so much. I will talk to you soon. And stay safe, stay healthy. Bye-bye.